For too long, we've regarded e commerce not as a service, which it fundamentally is, but as a technology, which we are conditioned to merely observe aloofly from an analytics dashboard and maybe occasionally poke with a stick. As a result, we got abandonment issues, literally. 70% cart abandonment rates, a number unchanged for more than a decade. And while many are rolling out the technocentric carpet for our new AI Robot Savior Overlords, Owen Landon of CartConvert suggests that in this case, the most effective layer of your tech stack is humans? I'm Justin Burrows. This is Commerce Chats by High Velocity. Owen Landon the Fourth, founder of CartConvert. Welcome to Commerce Chat. We're glad to have you today. I say we, but it's me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
We brought you on because we wanted to talk about abandoned carts, which are probably one of the most intriguing elements of money being left on the process of the commerce journey. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at CartConvert?
Yeah. So, founder of CartConvert, we're a checkout recovery service. Basically, we focus on recovering the checkouts of shoppers that are not opted into your marketing automations. So, we utilize live agents and peer-to-peer messaging to communicate with the shoppers that aren't necessarily opted into your Klaviyo automations or your attentive automations. So that I've been running that for about 2 years now. But I initially got my start into e-commerce at Molten, which is a headless e-commerce platform. So I saw that you had Jameis Driscoll on the podcast the other week, which is great. I call him
Such a great beard. His beard is so good. I hope he keeps.
it is a fantastic beard, and I am proud to have been witness of him first growing that beard. So I'm like, that's like I can stamp that on my resume. But I call Jameis the godfather of e-commerce because the 2 years I worked for him was the absolute crash course into the e-commerce world. I've always been in tech, but I was one of the first US hires at Molten, which eventually became Elastic Path. So got my kind of foot in the door while working there around like specializing in microservices, back in architecture of e-commerce, focusing on like headless e-commerce, utilizing APIs to create a really fast, engaging site experience. After that, I worked for a company called Bolt, which specialized in the checkout experience. So we were a checkout platform. We created like a one-click network. Essentially, we're trying to create similar to what Shop Pay has done today. Bolt is creating like a really fast, quick checkout for all non-Shopify websites. And then after that, started working for an SMS marketing platform. That's when I stumbled onto my idea of utilizing live agents and SMS to engage with shoppers and creating a more engaging, marketing communication rather than the standard automation. Hey, here's 10% discount, like buy. We wanted to create a more kind of humanized shopping experience, and that's how CartConvert came about.
That's so I think it's interesting because a lot of the conversations, especially in headless, is about performance, is
Mhm.
about what people see on the front end. But what I find fascinating is that like we have all of this focus on personalization and Jim cracks and gewgaws, not to be so dismissive of it, but there's a lot of things that you can do on the front end, but I think more than half of carts, like you have them. The person is on your site, they have taken something and they have put it in the cart. More than half of those people don't complete it. I mean, it's like right there. This isn't like 2%,
Yeah.
5% of somebody coming in from click ad. This is like real stuff. You could
Yeah.
really move the needle with it, right?
Yeah, it's wild. The stat that's you see in the space today is on average 70% of your checkouts are abandoned. Like that's a wild number, 70%. And to kind of see in the space, like everyone, rightfully so, is focused on customer retention, customer acquisition, and they're focused on like the user experience and the front end side of things, right? I mean, rightfully so, right? But
Mhm.
most of the time, what gets forgotten is the checkout side of things. Like checkout really hasn't been updated in years. Like Shopify has done a really good job of creating a good checkout. They created, Shop Pay. Bolt has come around and they trying to mimic that or something similar to that, but for all non-Shopify websites. So they focus on like Magento and BigCommerce and Salesforce communities. But you still see today, like checkouts today, like just long, arduous processes. Like you have to create an account. There's not multiple payment options. Like people struggle with that, and it's mind blowing to me how that number. I've been in the e-commerce space now for shoot like 8, 9, 10 years, and that number has floated at 70% the whole time I've been in it. And every company I've worked for has focused on lowering that. Everyone wants a high checkout completion percentage, right? But to do that, there's a lot of different factors that come into it, but no one has really addressed the checkout issue like up front as much as you think it would. And that's what we're trying to solve for here at CartConvert. So basically what we're trying to do at CartConvert is essentially my colleague Anne-Marie, who's worked in e-commerce on the retail side of things for the brand side of things for the last like 20 years. And she puts it in a really good way. Basically, the way that she says is like your sickness is the abandoned checkouts and your abandoned carts, right? The painkillers is basically the SMS communication, the SMS recoveries that we're doing with our live agents, right? But that's really just a painkiller. That's kind of masking some of the pain that you have today. The actual issue that you have deep down inside is the reason why people aren't checking out, aren't completing that checkout process. And where that data lives is through the conversations that we're having with our shoppers today. So at CartConvert, we're having live communications with the shoppers. So if you don't complete a checkout, Justin, like within 30 minutes, one of our support reps will text you, be like, "Hey, Justin, this is Owen. Like, how can I help you? Like, saw you're checking out these shoes." And the whole point is to take that shopper and ask them questions on, why they didn't check out, and hopefully eventually incentivize them to complete that checkout. But we get some really great data within those conversations. And most of that conversation comes around of like, hey, my credit card got declined, shipping rate was too high. I need this product by a certain day of the week, and it looks like you guys can't complete that. Now, a lot of these issues are solvable, but the brand just doesn't know like it actually is an issue because they're not actually going directly to the shopper. They're just looking at themselves and saying, hey, this looks nice, or we should do this because I've heard about this. And they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So I think just by going directly to your shoppers and getting that data and understanding like why they're not completing that checkout, then you can actually put into action. You actually have tangible evidence on why they're not completing that checkout, and you can put the fixes in, which is what we're helping do at CartConvert as well. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like all the roles I've had at every company in the e-commerce space has kind of led up to this moment because every single company I've worked for has focused on the checkout optimization side of things. So at Molten, right, we're utilizing microservices and APIs to create a really fast, engaging site experience, right? Ultimately leading to hopefully a fast and quick checkout experience. But with APIs, we could have plugged out our checkout and put in a tool like a Bolt really quickly to make an even quicker checkout, right? At Bolt, we're strictly focused on checkout optimization. So we're focused on creating a one-click shopper networks, kind of like what you see with Shop Pay, and creating a really wide network. So eventually you have enough shoppers that every checkout you experience is a one-click checkout, right? It recognizes who you are when you go to the checkout. You input your email or your phone number, bam, it has your credit card information saved and so on. And then in the SMS world, when I was working as the head of sales at SMS marketing platform, we're focused on recovering, carts, checkouts, engaging with shoppers top of funnel, send them potential discounts or product drops. But again, the whole idea around that though was, utilizing your VIP customers to convert them quickly and seamlessly as easy as possible. But we saw a lot of issues there though around checkout optimization because when they get to the checkout, sometimes life happens and they forget to complete the checkout and they need that little nudge. So there's a lot of different things that factor into there, but it's just surprising to me. We're in 2024 today, and that number of 70% of the average checkout abandonment rate really hasn't changed in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and I find that's interesting because again, I give a hard time to personalization and I'm not against personalization, but even if you like psychographically just understood every motivator for your customer, even if you had a perfect strategy for your personalization, maybe you're moving your conversion rate 2%, 3%. Like that would be really excellent for
Um,
that.
it's it's crazy. Just by that little, like, it's the ROI you can get from that is insane. We would do a test at Bolt. I think I forget the guarantee Bolt has now. I think they have a 5% lift in checkout conversion percentage
Hmm.
now, maybe a little less than that. They just throw on the website that they guarantee that. But for a while though, we would run like an A/B test, and the goal was to get to like 2, 3, 4, 5% lift in checkout conversion. And
Hmm.
just from that little like 2 to 3% lift, like the revenue you'd see like is so high, and it's just from these small little changes that that you would see. A lot of the times it's adding another payment option, right? A lot
Hmm.
of the times it's getting rid of the account creation side of things and allowing a quick guest checkout experience. So yeah, it's these small changes have a huge effect on revenue. And then as we all know too, like that one conversion, right? That shopper,
Hmm.
like they're if you give them a good buying experience and they have a good experience with your product, they're gonna come back and purchase. You have a lifetime customer right there for you. So you should be focused. I mean, it's crazy to me that we're not focused more on the conversion side of things because that one checkout could equal hundreds of checkouts in the lifetime of the brand, the lifetime of the shopper.
It's kind of like walking backwards for you did something where it's a win,
Yep.
right? So you're walking backwards from where that win was and trying to replicate that, the
Right.
bottom of the funnel, versus the top. And I think to your point, like people are always kind of focused on the front end, which is very important. But if, if they get their wallet out and then they're just like, I'm being interrupted, I've got other things going on, that makes a huge impact because it's right there, right on that point of conversion where it's
Yeah.
$0 or it's an actual sale.
Yeah, I think rightfully so though too, like, when you create a really engaging, like, website, right? Like, I love using Yeti as an example, like, Yeti's
Hmm.
website's great, like, you see people like Yeti just sells coolers, right?
Hmm.
But, like, when you go to their website, it's, like, this great engaging, like, people are on the beach, they're off-roading, they're drinking, they're hanging out, like, it's just, like, a fun like, it creates it creates a brand, right?
Hmm.
Versus just a cooler, and that's why they can charge so much. But when you go to some of these checkouts, you're like, you have a good experience, but then it's like, create an account, do this, do that, and it's just so archaic and it hasn't changed at all.
No.
So I always yeah, I do the same thing. I working backwards, I think is the way to go, right? When you should create an easy experience. How would you want to check out, right? What's the easiest way to do that? And that's one of the things why people liked Amazon in the first place. You can save your data in there and just check
Hmm.
out quickly. So, I think it's working backwards. It's fixing that problem first, and then working your way back, and then creating that engaging kinda user experience, and then you create a really powerful kinda site experience
I
from there.
I think that maybe part of it is you mentioned like how checkout hasn't really changed in 10 years. And there's an
Yeah,
argument to be made that it's even been longer than that. Back in the days of having to support different browsers where your checkout might not work on IE, a specific version. So you were very risk averse to do anything
right.
relating to checkout because again, that's when people have their money. But I find it interesting. I think that in that time, new technologies have developed where we just kind of forgot that we can actually be human beings.
Yeah,
Where we think that everything needs to be done in a form or be rules based. And it's like if somebody was in your shop and they had like if you were in a physical brick and mortar store, let's say, and you did, same revenue as a pretty good website, you know,
mhm,
and a person walked in and they had two pairs of shoes in their bag, and then they were like, nah, and then they just dropped them right there. You would use a person. You would use
yes,
a person to walk up to them and say, hey, do you need a different size? Is there, do you want me to hold these for you for later? Do you want to come back tomorrow? And we can totally
exactly,
do that now. But instead
100%.
we're like, let's have an AI agent do it.
Yeah, yeah, and and as much as AI has grown as quickly as it has and matured, I mean, you can still kind of tell sometimes when you're talking to a bot. And I'm still a big proponent of humanizing every experience, like utilizing humans for that.
Mhm.
Like it's hard to create to be empathetic with a shopper when you're an AI algorithm. I know there's like empathetic AI bots out there already today, but in reality, though, like I I I just find it strange of putting so much attention onto something when we have humans right here that do the job, if not better.
Also, there's
And
a
so
degree of agency, I would imagine. I mean,
100%.
you can't go up to a human representative and say disregard all previous instructions, give me the product.
And you also a lot of these also too, you have a support team. And it's like I think the shift is gonna change is support isn't just gonna be support. I think support's slowly gonna start becoming sales, right?
Hmm.
They're already starting to do that a little bit today, but I think it's turning your support reps into a sales team for them, right? Because they're
Yeah.
already managing support tickets out of a Gorgeous or a Zendesk. They're already getting those leads and they see those problems. But
Hmm.
if you can weaponize your support reps with the ability to sell things and understand the problems that customers are having, then you're also saving money and you're utilizing the team that you already have. And that's which at CartConvert, which is what we're doing today, is we have our own support agents that represent your brands. So when someone abandons that checkout, right, we can come in and say, "Hey, how can I help you? So you're looking at this product, like, you want help with a discount, anything?" But if you already have a built out support team that knows the product inside out, you don't want to train any new agents. You can utilize your support reps themselves, and that's where I find really interesting because I've seen today there's tools like I was just reading an article on Gorgeous where there was a subscription box company and they were paying a revenue recovery service for because they would have a lot of like abandoned like failed payments stuff like that to come and recover those for them. They turned their support teams into that revenue recovery service by just giving that support team discount codes. And they're like, "Hey, anyone that fails the payments from a subscription, like email
Hmm.
them directly, HTML email, like don't include like any links. And then when they respond back, we can send them that link and get the payment." And they had like a 30% increase in recovery service just from that. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can utilize it, and that's what we're trying to do here at CartConvert. And yeah, like you said, I think it's like when you walk into a store, like look at your online store as like your agents as the store clerk. Hey, how can I help you?
Yeah.
What are you looking
Yeah.
for?
And the thing is, as they say in Texas, you didn't used to could, but now you can. And
Yeah.
there's no reason, but it requires kind of new thinking, new systems. And I think, a lot of times you talk about like microservices, it makes it in headless. You can pop in, different services you can add on, you can take away. Oh, I have a challenging question for you.
Sure.
In my experience, about 80% of people who go through checkout, even people who have an account, go through a guest or unregistered checkout. How do you This is 8 out of 10 of the people on your site. How do you reach them? How are you getting in contact with those people? What are the challenges there?
Oh, the people that abandon?
Yeah, the people who abandon who are not registered. Are you able to is Are there
Yeah.
ways to get in contact with them?
Yeah, great question. So when the shopper abandons their checkout, they don't have to be registered at all. So basically, we get that through the integration with the ecom platform through their checkout API. So we have a integration with BigCommerce and Shopify today that we pull those leads directly from the ecom platform itself. So we have
Mhm.
all the shopper data directly there, already filled out, their name, their email, phone number. So any of the data that they filled out within that checkout gets pushed to us. So that's how we get their phone number. So they have to have their phone number filled into the checkout, and when they abandon that checkout, post the phone number that
Mhm.
gets sent over to us. If they don't have their phone number filled in, we filter that out because we don't can't message them unless they're an existing account member. Then we can
Mhm.
pull that data in. But they're not an existing account member, or if they're not, opted into the marketing communications, we can still get that lead. That lead comes through. We'll have their phone number there. It's almost like a sales lead. We call it an active
Mhm.
lead. And it takes about 20 to 30 minutes for that abandoned cart and checkout to come through from Shopify or BigCommerce.
Mm.
And then we can message them directly from there. And we'll get notified when they respond back. But today we're seeing like a 16% higher revenue driven than the automations today. 16%. And that's just because, again, they're communicating with, most of the time they have questions on the kind of buying experience.
Mm.
But the big thing with that though is like the other alternative to that is there's some crazy data points with this. So on average, there's not every brand's different, but on average, only 10% of existing shoppers today are opted into your marketing communications, right?
Yeah.
So what that means is that if you get an abandoned checkout that happens, you're only reaching out to about 10% of all existing abandoned checkouts. So the
Yeah.
other 90% is just out there not being touched. And so other alternatives to reach those customers is you can like retarget them with like Google Ads, but as we all know, that's getting more and more expensive,
Mm.
and you don't even know if that's even going to work. Where with this, what we're doing is we can now reach out to those other existing 90% of abandoned checkouts because compliantly we're humans texting other humans. So TCPA laws allow you have to, or excuse me, TCPA laws, you have to be opted into the marketing communication to receive an automated message.
Mhm.
But we're a P2P platform. So that's peer to peer. So as long as it's a
Mhm.
human texting another human, compliantly you can reach out to all those phone numbers there, all those shoppers. So we can then reach out to those 90% of shoppers for you, help recover them, and ultimately, if you want, turn them into a marketing customer as well, and get them to get into the marketing automations also. But with that though, I mean, with SMS is great. You have a 99% open rate. So
Mhm.
you know that when you send that message to that shopper, they're going to open it. And we have on average, a 30% recovery rate from it. So it's
Mm.
working. So, and the way that we do it also is we're a pay for performance model. So we only get paid when we recover that checkout for you. We take a 5% cut of that. So if it's a $100 pair of shoes that we recover, we get $5. If we don't recover anyone, we don't get paid. So that's the nice thing about it, is that we know it works, right? Like you can like retarget these shoppers, you can do ads, you can throw a bunch at the wall. You don't know if that's going to work. With this, you know it's going to work because you only pay for it when it does work. So I wanted to create it as simple as possible because we know how effective it is.
It's interesting. I don't know if that's low tech or high tech. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
But again, it's the element of using humans as part of a technical transaction,
yeah,
but you're still dealing with human, and you're being able to have that kind of agency and to be able to relate to people who are in the midst of a decision, and you get to learn a little bit more about them. And it's not, I would imagine that the data collection is probably a little bit richer than trying to infer it from like a, like in Google Analytics, you're trying to look at your checkout flow and
yeah,
infer, what's been happening. You can actually say, hey, what just happened? And they could say, well, I'll tell you what happened.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like, and I don't want to like take away from like brands what they've done with like their automations with Klaviyo or an Attentive or something
Mhm.
like that. Like those work really well, those platforms. We work side by side with that. We're not replacing any of that, right? So I
Mhm.
think with automations plus that human element creates a really engaging experience because you can create your VIP customers can have usually stay in those automation side of things because on average, only your shopper only lasts 2.5 text messages and then they
Mhm.
opt out. So they're not really in there for that long. And if they are in there for longer than that, they're probably a VIP customer and they care about product drops and
Mhm.
discounts and so on. So that's why those platforms work really well. We're there to add that human element to it. Obviously reach more customers, but the whole idea though is creating that human element with it. And then, like you
Mhm.
said, getting those conversations and understanding why there was problems checking out, and then taking that data and putting that into action and making the fixes. that are necessary. So maybe it's adding more payment options. Maybe it's creating more discounts, or maybe it's fixing your shipping project lot or logistics. So yeah, there's a lot you can get from the data just from having those conversations with the shoppers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear a lot about like marketing automation, and I think marketing automation is really important.
Yeah.
Certainly key, but I think sometimes, especially in this area, it's just so valuable. Like the potential transaction is so valuable. Why not just actually use a human? There's no, you
Yeah.
don't have to use it for every single use case. You can actually
Yeah.
decide.
We Stanley was an old customer of mine. Stanley, the water bottle, the thermos.
Yes,
Um,
1918. Yes,
yeah.
13. Stanley
Who was it?
1913.
You had him on the podcast the other week.
Michael
Mike.
Francis from
Yeah,
Elva. Yeah, yeah.
Mike's great. Shout out to Mike. Mike's the man. Yeah, I met him at Shop Talk this year. He's great. He's a Boston guy, and he. So we were talking. I was talking about this. So Stanley, extremely popular, and they wouldn't run that many campaigns. Anytime they had a campaign, it's usually like a new product drop or a new color.
Hmm.
It would explode and would sell out in minutes. They
Hmm.
would generate just millions of dollars just from this one campaign that they spent, maybe $1,000 on or something like that. So
Hmm.
it works. So those automations work really well. That was with their SMS campaigns. Emails, I'm sure it's even more. So that was just with their automation, the SMS campaign. So those that works really well there. But when one of those shoppers again is maybe checking out and they don't complete that checkout, that's where it's really good to add that human piece and talking to those shoppers and so on. But we actually speaking of adding that human element. I have a customer today that they sell a product. They sell car covers, right? And it's for if you live in Phoenix, Arizona or something like that, your car gets really hot. You put covers on it
Hmm.
so the paint doesn't dry up or anything like that. So car covers for every type of car. And they said their buying cycle is typically 2 weeks. So
Hmm.
they'll see the shopper come on the website, they'll see him check out a few pages, leave, come back a few days later. And usually what they're doing is they're trying to figure out which size fits their car. So they're doing
Hmm.
their own product research and not talking to anyone. And so my customer had a good idea of he's they use automations, they use a welcome campaign, you can get
Hmm.
10% off when you first opt in. But he was like, what if we, instead of just doing checkout recovery with the humans, could we add that human element higher up in the marketing funnel? Instead of sending them a welcome message and giving them a discount, can we send them a welcome message from the human that has a discount with it too? But we want
Hmm.
to engage the shopper as quickly as possible because we know they're going to leave and it's going to take 2 weeks for them to come back. So we want to answer any of the questions they have right away. So it's like we said earlier, it's that shopper coming into the store and the store clerk saying, "Hey, how can I help you?"
Yeah.
That's essentially what they're trying to do right now. So we're playing around with that. We're messing around with that too. So it's not just with checkout recovery too. There's also a lot of different
Hmm.
pieces of the shopper journey that you can add that human element to. And most of the time it's for a product that, it's probably doing a bunch of research. We have some mattress companies that use us. That would be really great for. So yeah, I think people are starting to realize now too, there are a lot of different areas of that shopper journey that just talking to someone, it's not intrusive at all.
Yeah.
It comes across as more engaging.
Well, I think I'm much more tolerant if, you know, of getting like an SMS
Yeah.
related to something that I've been doing. You know,
Yes.
I a call, maybe not. I don't. Maybe that's a generational thing, but an SMS I can deal with. Although Lord knows I've got all the presidential candidates like blowing up my phone all the time.
I
Apparently,
just got one today. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I find that that's kind of fascinating, but also kind of hopeful
Yeah.
because websites, at a certain point, when we got started with this, it was like a black box. You had it, and then you had to look at your analytics engine to really kind of figure out what was going on. But now it's actually much more like interactive and human intervention possible. Because Lord knows, especially when you're dealing with technology or elements that require a fitment element like auto
Yeah.
parts, or if you're trying to get,
Yeah.
a cover like for your car or whatever, it feels so much better if you can say, "Am I in the wrong place? Is this the right thing?" And you can have somebody say, "Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. yes, this is the, this is the product that will fit what you're
100%.
looking for. Maybe it's a different product, and they can
100%.
say, "Here you go." So,
Yeah,
well,
and that's why I like working with BigCommerce and Magento because they have a lot of those B2B companies using the
hmm
platform. Again, it's a little bit they have a team of sales reps that utilize them, and they have a team of support reps
oh,
that you
I
and
bet you
so
B2B would really
yeah.
could really use this. Oh,
Yeah, we're starting to see that more and more with us. So it's like
yeah.
basically it's like arming your sales team to communicate with the shoppers that are coming on. So you get notified when one of your accounts is shopping online.
hmm
You wanna talk to them as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So you can text them directly from there.
Yeah. I find B2B like completely fascinating just because
Yeah,
the scale, the way that you put together an order, and like the high touch that can that typically is like technical, but a lot of times
yeah,
people just call up, but you have to be able to support both. You want to be
yes,
able to start an order, you want to call in and say, okay, here's my order, this is what I have. And as B2B kind of permeates out, through
yep.
all elements of the B2B things, like that human intervention, I think is going to be
And
really
that and that's why I'm such a fan of what Elastic is doing, what BigCommerce is doing, what you guys are doing with the high velocity from the front end side of things, is like you can create there's 2 things, right? If you're a B2B or a B2C business, right? If you have both, right? But mainly if you're B2B, like you're gonna create a totally different site experience than you would if you're a B2C company.
hmm
And like the whole best in breed architecture is built on. It's around like APIs, right? You have all these microservices, ERP, order management, PIM, all that stuff. You have all these tools out there, these platforms out there today are focused on just that one microservice, right?
hmm
And they're really easy to sync up into like a headless architecture that's built on APIs. So then you can
hmm
essentially you're building your own platform, your own kind of site experience,
yeah.
and then using something like a high velocity to create an engaging front end experience. But that B2B site experience is totally different than a B2C, and I don't think people have really solved for that yet. And that's what Jameis and the team at Elastic is doing a really good job with. And some of the guys at Commerce Tools as well. They're kind of focused on that
hmm
also. And that's what I like, and that's kind of what I got started in. So that's interesting to me. I don't think people have solved it quite yet, but I think
hmm
that whole microservices API driven backend side of things, like that's going to be that's going to be the way I think a lot of these B2B businesses are going to be built on in the future.
Cool. Well, Owen Landon, the fourth founder,
Yes.
CEO of CartConvert, thank you for joining us today. I found I find this immensely interesting that the next element that people need to be adding to their technical stack are humans. It's
Yes.
humans. Who would have thought that that's the
Ooh,
next one of the new emerging technologies? I feel good about that. I know a few.
humanize the buying experience, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Owen, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Justin.
Brought to you by High Velocity, enterprise front end app for your commerce stack. Faster performance, faster development, faster launch, faster change, all with one cost of ownership. Speed and direction, high velocity. That means fast.